Okay, for this particular exam technique question, this one is trying to highlight the importance of replicating the exam environment during your study period. So in this particular context, I set up the analogy of the Golden State Warriors. They're preparing for a final. Their coach decides to use a 40-second shot clock instead of the standard 24-second shot clock, and whether that would be a good strategy. And we obviously, the answer is of course no. But and then the analogy is a physics student preparing for an exam, for the physics exam, in an environment that looks completely different to the actual exam environment. So it could be in the dorm room, listening to music, going at a certain pace, randomly checking online and so on. And that's not a good strategy to prepare yourself for a situation in which you are examined under 60 minutes with only an equation sheet. And I highly recommend that a certain fraction, and probably a significant fraction, of your study time is preparing to perform in a very similar environment. So once you feel comfortable with the material, and that's okay to move at your own pace, do study groups and so on, but once you're getting closer to the exam date itself, you need to consider setting a stopwatch. You've got for this particular exam, you have 20 questions in 1 hour. It's a 3-minute average. If you do not practice this particular technique and this particular time constraint, it is very, very difficult to just turn that on in an exam environment. So all great athletes, all great business people, if you're preparing for interviews or so on, the preparation is trying to mimic the environment as best as possible. If you think about boxing, they try to bring in the practice boxers, very similar styles. If they're fighting a left-handed boxer, they bring in left-handed boxers. So the same thing in terms of exam environments is that you know what you're going to be examined on, you know how long the exam is going to be, you know that the constraints in terms of the equation sheet or not. So you sitting down and using these questions and trying to answer the questions, certainly on the practice exam, after you've done it for a little while, to see if you're comfortable answering within a 3-minute time limit. You can take some of the homework questions that look similar to exam questions, see again if you can do them in a time limit. You also want to up the sort of consider how many mastering physics questions you can get right with only on one try. So a lot of people, because there's a built-in practice, or like you can get the answer wrong before getting deducted, or they're not for credit, can lead you into a false sense, and it can sort of decrease your discipline and focus when answering quantitative questions. You will only have one try on the exam, so the more that you practice discipline under a time constraint in your practice, the more likely you are to replicate that type of discipline in the actual exam environment. It's very, very difficult to turn on discipline and focus when it has to be practiced before. So I highly recommend that a significant fraction of your study period is replicating an exam environment, giving yourself the highest stakes. It's basically one answer, one try, and double checking all of your math. Because the more you, as I said, the more you replicate that type of discipline in your practice, the more likely you are to do it in the actual exam.